Good morning and welcome back to another episode of Coach's Corner. This is the third installment of the consumption tax series. I realize that I have not posted the second part publicly. That's due to a change of opinion on something, and I will get that published publicly for consumption as soon as possible. So, for this part of the series, what I would like to discuss are a couple of the concerns that vocal critics of this proposal have voiced in the past, and I'd like to address those very straightforward to the point. The first concern that is often pointed to in relation to the consumption tax as a replacement for the income tax is the amount of revenue that is generated from that tax system. Is it enough to pay for current government programs, things like that? And the reason that the percentages have been set as they are in the proposal is precisely because it's a proposal that's revenue neutral, meaning that you don't have to change the amount that is collected. In fact, that's the goal. Keep the amount that's collected for government purposes the same, even though the people that have come up with this proposal are very much like me in the mindset that we spend too much money. We spend way too much of other people's money on things that various groups think are important for this or that reason. I would first like to mention that there are a couple resources where you can follow along. I've jotted down some notes so I don't get the numbers wrong. But you can go to fairtax.org and you can find PDF printouts and charts in terms of the amounts of revenue collected at different income levels and household sizes and things of that nature. You can also visit, I'm not sure what website he uses, but you can look up Dr. Kotlikoff at Kotlikoff, I believe, at Boston University, who keeps a running tab of the differences of percentages of revenue that we accrue from tax receipts on a yearly basis. It depends on what changes to the tax code, the tax brackets are made as Congress votes on the replacement of various laws or the addition of various laws in relation to the tax code on a yearly basis. But Dr. Kotlikoff seems to do a very thorough job of keeping up with that information. The numbers I'm going to use for today are from 2013, and I know that they've changed a little bit, but this definitely serves the purpose of illustrating the point as far as what is received and what is spent and things like that, and who it's collected from and the redistribution mechanisms and things like that. Okay? It's the PDF that I have saved to my personal iPad, and I use it as a reference often. So, the number one concern that is often mentioned is the collection of the amount of revenue, and like I said, the percentages are based on what we accrue in tax receipts right now. I would note that I believe it's a huge problem for anybody in society to believe that the purpose of government is to collect more revenue. Okay, if that's what you think that the tax system should be for, to be used as a means to apply a punitive structure to those who you believe have more, I have a problem with that. That's nothing more than the greed that you say that you dislike of corporate profits and things like that. Okay, so, but to get back to my point, the amount of revenue collected would actually be greater under the consumption tax because of the fact that all black market transactions go untaxed in terms of income as it stands right now. Meaning drug dealers or child sex traffickers, things like that, they're making their income under the table illegally and not paying any tax at all under this system, under the income tax system. They don't report their income, so they don't pay taxes on it, okay? So the reason that the revenue receipts would increase there is simply because the few million people that do under the table black market business under the current system, they have to spend their money, their resources on houses and cars and food and gas and things like that, commodities of all kinds, and that's where taxes are collected under the consumption tax. Nobody can avoid paying for the things that they need, and a lot of times drug dealers often live very lavish lifestyles and yachts and boats and fancy cars and multitudes of cars and things like that. You're going to see an immediate and drastic increase in the amount of revenue that's collected by the government. that shouldn't be your goal at all, that the government receives more. That's a bad way to think about this, but that should alleviate any concerns that you won't be able to collect as much and pay for the programs that society does in fact need and support, regardless of whether or not you think there are too many of those and funded at too high levels. Okay. The second point that I would make is you see this real concern, and I think sometimes it's a legitimate concern, and sometimes it's more, like I mentioned before, it's a greed-based concern, a punitive structure upon. It's a soaking the rich philosophy. But I do think that there's a legitimate concern on the socialist redistributionist mindset of how do we go about implementing a redistributionist system of tax collection for the various groups that we actually do believe need those additional resources and the help from society, especially from those of us who are more than capable of providing for ourselves, and in terms of what are we doing to give back to those who are truly in need. And the answer to that is called a prebate system, and you should really think about this as very similar. It's not dissimilar from a universal basic income. And before I go any further on the numbers and how this works, I want to point out that I will have socialists that, and I regularly have this in my messages, that complain about this idea of a consumption tax and universal basic income as consumer-driven, consumption-driven, and therefore they believe that this capitalistic mindset will hold even greater power, and it's not a desire of theirs to have greater levels of capitalist activity, but I would point out you can find a number of resources, including one that's always cited to me as this golden rule kind of blog, I guess, podcast, if you will, on YouTube. It's Lee Camp, Redacted Tonight, the Zeitgeist Movement, this heavily redistributionist mindset. He's outright socialist, okay? And this guy regularly promotes and brings on other socialist redistributionists that promote the universal basic income structure, okay? The disagreement I have with that position in terms of the people that are promoting it that he brings in, that socialists will cite, is that they want the universal basic income on top of all of the trillions of dollars worth of government programs that we already spend as a welfare state. That is a major problem in my mind. We spend far too much money on other people already, okay? We need to drastically limit the number of people we redistribute our resources to. It's a massive problem going forward. 2032, 2040, the two different goalposts there. We're going to have some real financial struggles if I'm going to make a prediction right here in terms of running out of other people's money at those particular dates for reasons I should have a separate blog for. But anyways, the prebate, the universal basic income philosophy of this this mechanism within the consumption tax, as far as how to handle poverty and government programs and things like that, okay? A prebate is nothing more than a percentage given back at the beginning of each month to families based on household size and income levels that seeks to alleviate the tax burden for basic necessities, food and shelter and clothing, things like that, okay? And to give you an idea of the numbers here, in 2013 the federal poverty line was $31,020 for a family of four, two-parent household, okay? With a 23% consumption tax for that family, exactly at the federal poverty line. The goal of this system of prebates, of the universal basic income mechanism here, is to untax the poor, okay? And so that family of four at that level would receive the full 23% prebate of their annual income, okay? So that's $7,135 per year, or $594.58 per month that they would get at the beginning of each month so that it accounts for the tax burden of 23% per item of consumption that they have. Okay, so the goal here is to untax the poor. As you drop below that federal poverty line threshold, that percentage isn't just untaxed at zero, it's actually applied as a negative tax rate. So if you had half that level of income for that family of four at $15,000 and whatever dollars, you would actually pay a negative 23% tax, and you would be the recipient of prebates, but you would of additional prebates, but you would not be taxed at all for your consumption of those basic necessities, the products that you buy in that regard. As you go up the income scale, the trend is reversed. Okay, so it is a progressive application of taxation, in that the wealthy, the people who buy the most, who consume the most, are going to pay the most. Okay, we're not going to untax the poor at all. There is no prebate. It's a 0% prebate for the wealthiest people among us. Okay, they're not getting anything back from society. We're not redistributing resources back to those who do not need it. Okay, and one question that's typically asked here is, how much manipulating of redistribution channels would we have to do to accommodate this process? And the answer is virtually zero. Social Security already uses the direct deposit means to about 92% of our recipients. And Social Security administrations on a state basis are the ones who would administer those prebates in the form of either direct deposit, smart card, much like a debit card, or via snail mail, post. Okay, and it's quite simple to administer those in the current structure already, so you wouldn't have to add any kind of technological system or any tax collection and redistribution agencies that would add expenditures and compliance costs and things like that on a state-to-state basis. You could allow the existing structure to be the avenues, the channels for which we use to distribute those resources already. Okay, nothing else needs to be added to accomplish this task. Okay, and one other point that I would like to make in terms of just how big of an issue this is in terms of societal expenditures to comply with